1. A legal clinic instructor assigns students to assess a complex adverse possession case. Which teaching method best supports adult learning? A. Multiple choice quiz. B. Passive lecture. C. Role-play negotiation. D. Recitation of definitions. 2. In a property law module, a mentor asks students to evaluate zoning compliance. This approach fosters A. Passive memorization. B. Skills-based learning. C. Textbook-only understanding. D. Surface-level knowledge. 3. A professor designs a curriculum unit on real covenants. Which adult learning principle is best applied? A. Authoritarian instruction. B. Case-based scenarios. C. Memorization of rules. D. Top-down lecture delivery. 4. When coaching a student on future interests, what evaluation method demonstrates higher-order learning? A. Flashcard review. B. Oral presentation with canned A. C. True-false test. D. Peer-led brainstorming. 5. A student argues that a restrictive covenant limits religious use. The instructor's feedback should emphasize A. Regulatory overreach. B. Equal protection analysis. C. First Amendment rights. D. Case-based reasoning. 6. Clinical instruction on eminent domain should integrate which adult learning component? A. Judicial precedent. B. Policy criticism. C. Government taking simulation. D. Doctrine memorization. 7. In property mentoring, a student is asked to teach others about easements. This reflects A. Passive observation. B. Peer instruction. C. Summative testing. D. Text-based recitation. 8. A professor uses local property disputes in class. This aligns with A. Constructivist theory. B. Formalist teaching. C. Regulatory suppression. D. Fixed curriculum. 9. A student questions a deed's delivery validity. Which learning method would best reinforce legal analysis? A. Textbook summary. B. Closed book multiple choice. C. Document simulation. D. Legal definition quiz. 10. Which evaluation technique best measures mastery of marketable title doctrine? A. Spelling accuracy. B. Risk identification exercise. C. True-false worksheet. D. Title trivia test. 11. A mentor challenges students to resolve conflicting land sale contingencies. This supports A. Analytical reasoning. B. Emotional compliance. C. Legal stagnation. D. Doctrinal ambiguity. 12. What instructional strategy best teaches legal implications of tenancy in common? A. Case hypotheticals. B. Audio lectures. C. Silent reading. D. Checklists. 13. In teaching fee simple determinable estates, instructors should emphasize A. Terminable interest logic. B. Leasehold doctrine. C. Parole evidence rule. D. Standing. 14. Students assess the constitutionality of a zoning ordinance. Which legal principle applies? A. Federal preemption. B. Rational basis review. C. Equal apportionment. D. Riparian doctrine. 15. In evaluating a student's understanding of fixtures, instructors should use A. Real-world disputes. B. Essay questions only. C. Lecture-only format. D. Weekly memorization. 16. A mentor reviews equitable servitudes using real client scenarios. This promotes A. Passive learning. B. Experiential instruction. C. Legal restriction. D. Memorization of cases. 17. Clinical instructors preparing students for land use hearings should teach A. Administrative law skills. B. Constitutional doctrines only. C. Market valuation. D. Cross-jurisdiction trivia. 18. What is the best approach to evaluating student learning on landlord liability? A. Mock trial. B. Legal multiple choice. C. Syllabus outline. D. Text-based quiz. 19. A student claims prescriptive easement rights. The instructor should focus the mentoring on A. Adverse use analysis. B. Constructive trust theory. C. Profit à prendre. D. Bailment issues. 20. Curriculum focusing on public use under eminent domain best supports A. Substantive due process learning. B. Constructive eviction debate. C. Market transaction skills. D. Tax regulation. 21. In mentoring sessions, guiding students through foreclosure case law helps reinforce A. Procedural accuracy. B. Equitable relief reasoning. C. Statutory property transfer. D. Limited title vesting. 22. What principle must be taught when discussing property recording statutes? A. Notice and res notice rules. B. Separation of powers. C. Equal protection clause. D. Voting rights doctrine. 23. When a professor assigns a title insurance research project, the objective is to A. Practice memorization. B. Promote real-world application. C. Recite statutes. D. Avoid theoretical learning. 24. Which teaching method is most effective in a curriculum unit on constructive eviction? A. Fact scenario analysis. B. Casebook summary. C. Silent annotation. D. Matching definitions. 25. A student simulates negotiation over a lease dispute. The instructor is employing A. Collaborative learning. B. Competitive assessment. C. Individualized ranking. D. Memorization drills. 26. Evaluating a student's grasp of subrogation in mortgages is best done through A. Essay brief. B. Property diagram. C. Online quiz. D. Flowchart logic. 27. A professor encourages critical discussion on land grant history. This supports A. Civic literacy. B. Rote learning. C. Legal silence. D. Conformist instruction. 28. A legal mentor introduces HUD regulations in class. This supports A. Regulatory compliance. B. Judicial policy divergence. C. Fee shifting. D. Case streamlining. 29. Students draft deeds for a simulated transaction. This method fosters A. Practical skills development. B. Theoretical redundancy. C. Learning through osmosis. D. Passive review. 30. When reviewing joint tenancy severance, instructors should highlight A. Unity's doctrine. B. Commercial leasing. C. Security interest hierarchy. D. Trespass law. 31. A professor requires students to identify encumbrances on a title report. This approach, A. Trains legal analysis. B. Relies on opinion. C. Favors memorization. D. Promotes indifference. 32. In a seminar on possessory estates, students compare remainders and executory interests. This supports A. Higher-order synthesis. B. Passive observation. C. Instructor-only discourse. D. Data entry. 33. Teaching the rule against perpetuities through flowcharts addresses. A. Visual adult learning styles. B. Statutory compliance only. C. Academic laziness. D. Lecture fatigue. 34. A mentor has students critique a city's zoning variance process. This encourages A. Civic analysis. B. Constitutional avoidance. C. Disengagement. D. Procedural forgetfulness. 35. Instructors use maps to teach land descriptions. This strategy supports A. Kinesthetic learning. B. Memorization accuracy. C. Judicial formalism. D. Passive intake. 36. Which property doctrine must be emphasized in housing discrimination clinics? A. Fair Housing Act compliance. B. Zoning ordinance drafting. C. Fee-tail limitations. D. Joint tenancy rights. 37. A professor introduces race statutes using comparative jurisdiction cases. This promotes A. Analytical depth. B. Legislative simplification. C. One-size-fits-all reasoning. D. Case denial. 38. To assess constructive notice understanding, use A. Recording statute scenarios. B. Oral argument. C. Fill in the blank. D. Silent reading. 39. A mentor reviews waste doctrine via commercial lease hypotheticals. This applies A. Clinical realism. B. Legal conformity. C. Avoidance learning. D. Rule-based guesswork. 40. When teaching the doctrine of merger, instructors should emphasize A. Title unification effects. B. Possessory estate transfers. C. Inheritance principles. D. Surveying boundaries. 41. Which activity best teaches equitable title and land contracts? A. Simulated closing. B. Rule recitation. C. Lecture transcription. D. Jurisdictional comparison. 42. Law students evaluating mortgage acceleration clauses demonstrate A. Contract interpretation. B. Commercial ownership. C. Guarantor liability. D. Lease formation. 43. A professor assigns group work on property law reform. This develops A. Collaborative legal reasoning. B. Lecture retention. C. Rule isolation. D. Doctrinal deference. 44. What principle must be emphasized when students evaluate eviction procedures? A. Due process. B. Voting rights. C. Tax parity. D. Police power. 45. A professor facilitates peer evaluation of easement disputes. This enhances A. Active engagement. B. Legal indifference. C. Non-participation. D. Structural ambiguity. 46. Which legal theory underpins takings litigation in class simulations? A. Just compensation. B. Fiduciary duty. C. Mens rea. D. Standing to sue. 47. A mentor assigns students to trace title chains. This exercise builds A. Legal tracking skills. B. Statutory defaulting. C. Rule ignorance. D. Procedural disinterest. 48. Students write memos on housing code violations. This helps develop A. Communication clarity. B. Legal delay. C. Summary judgment. D. Fee-tail emphasis. 49. A faculty member integrates client interviews on property boundaries. This teaches A. Real-world communication. B. Law journal formatting. C. Academic uniformity. D. Memorization of lines. 50. Which clause is central to federal regulation of property rights? A. Commerce Clause. B. Necessary and Proper Clause. C. Establishment Clause. D. Privileges or Immunities Clause. 51. When teaching nuisance law, the most effective method for adult learners is A. Analyzing real-life environmental conflicts. B. Memorizing statutory definitions. C. Reciting common law rules. D. Reading passive lecture notes. 52. A professor assigns students to draft leases. This promotes A. Practical drafting proficiency. B. Doctrinal minimalism. C. Lecture retention only. D. Legal evasion. 53. What evaluation method best assesses student understanding of zoning ordinances? A. Community planning simulation. B. Multiple choice definitions. C. Fill in the blank. D. Quizlet matching. 54. A student asks about landlord retaliation protections. The mentor should explain A. Tenant rights under statutory law. B. Executive branch powers. C. Hearsay exceptions. D. Adverse possession. 55. Teaching the elements of adverse possession using property line disputes promotes A. Experiential engagement. B. Repetitive learning. C. Passive summary. D. Silent observation. 56. What principle guides student analysis of subleases? A. Privity of estate. B. Equal protection. C. Police power. D. Judicial supremacy. 57. A curriculum module on licenses and profits best uses. A. Land use role play. B. Lecture-only instruction. C. Case summarization. D. Legal vocabulary tests. 58. Students compare tenancy at will and periodic tenancy in a client scenario. This activity fosters A. Legal differentiation. B. Rote conformity. C. Passive viewing. D. Syllabus duplication. 59. Instructors using past bar questions to teach concurrent estates are promoting A. High-stakes exam familiarity. B. Legal confusion. C. Rigid recall. D. Doctrinal variance. 60. To address housing discrimination in mentorship sessions, instructors should apply A. Fair Housing Act precedents. B. Property tax assessments. C. Local funding strategies. D. Common area agreements. 61. Which instructional method supports adult learners' mastery of leasehold interests? A. Scenario-based problem solving. B. Spelling drills. C. Lecture-only recitation. D. Flashcard review. 62. Students draft closing documents for residential real estate. This reinforces A. Transactional competency. B. Case briefing. C. Passive listening. D. Memorization drills. 63. A professor assessing water rights cases should emphasize A. Riparian and prior appropriation doctrines. B. Homestead exemptions. C. Zoning density. D. Profit limitations. 64. Law students reviewing encroachment claims should practice A. Boundary surveys. B. Lease review. C. Remainder analysis. D. Mortgage calculations. 65. A mentor simulates a real estate sale with title issues. This builds A. Problem solving under pressure. B. Judicial case recall. C. Legal formality. D. Rule-based guessing. 66. Students analyze eminent domain abuse cases. The focus should be on A. Public use versus private gain. B. Environmental regulation. C. Common law trespass. D. Fee tail duration. 67. What learning activity reinforces understanding of the statute of frauds in land sales? A. Drafting enforceable agreements. B. Memorizing common law. C. Textbook annotation. D. Peer repetition. 68. A professor requires oral argument on real covenant enforceability. This strengthens A. Persuasive communication. B. Doctrinal silence. C. Grammatical recall. D. Case list memorization. 69. In clinical sessions on property transactions, students should demonstrate A. Compliance with ethical practices. B. Passive receipt of tasks. C. Doctrinal rigidity. D. Short answer speed. 70. A curriculum unit involving partition actions teaches A. Equitable distribution of land interests. B. Lease acceleration. C. Fee simple absolute. D. Mortgage enforcement. 71. Which tool enhances understanding of recording priority disputes? A. Timeline analysis. B. Venn diagrams. C. Spelling correction. D. Case pairing. 72. Mentoring a student on deed delivery requires emphasis on A. Intent and acceptance. B. Abstract rights. C. Equitable servitudes. D. Common law property rules. 73. In teaching governmental takings, simulations should include A. Just compensation calculations. B. Loan amortization. C. Lease gap periods. D. Leasehold taxes. 74. A student learns about easement appurtenant via neighbor access cases. The instructor should focus on A. Dominant and servient estate relationships. B. Market competition. C. Contractual warranties. D. Life estate measurement. 75. Peer review of title search accuracy builds skills in A. Legal precision and attention to detail. B. Doctrinal simplification. C. Passive editing. D. Abstract law theory. 76. A professor mentors a student who will teach property law concepts to peers. This models A. Mentorship and scaffolding. B. Lecture echoing. C. Conformist methods. D. Memorization outsourcing. 77. To address property transfer taxation, instructors should emphasize A. Regulatory compliance and disclosures. B. Constitutional silence. C. Water rights exclusion. D. Municipal waiver. 78. A property law exam includes a simulation of foreclosure defense. This evaluates A. Student advocacy skills. B. Passive knowledge. C. Rule confusion. D. Zoning speculation. 79. A student resolves priority conflicts under race notice statutes. This reinforces A. Recording system fluency. B. Historic title failure. C. Privity distinction. D. Abstract claim evaluation. 80. Instructors require students to role-play a landlord-tenant mediation. This enhances A. Conflict resolution and communication. B. Standardized test scores. C. Textbook referencing. D. Rule list recall. 81. A student in a property law clinic is tasked with analyzing a deed that includes ambiguous language regarding a life estate. Which instructional method best supports the development of precise legal interpretation? A. Group discussion of case law. B. Silent reading of treatises. C. Fill-in-the-blank worksheet. D. Memorization of definitions. 82. In mentoring sessions about zoning compliance, which approach most effectively builds practical reasoning and communication skills? A. Simulated city council hearing with peer feedback. B. Multiple choice exam on land use terms. C. Written lecture summaries. D. Dictation of statutory language. Bar exam real property test. The bar exam real property test evaluates a candidate's knowledge and analytical skills related to property law, a core subject in U.S. legal practice. It focuses on key concepts such as ownership interests, land use, landlord-tenant relationships, real estate transactions, easements, covenants, zoning, recording statutes, and the rule against perpetuities. The test assesses the ability to identify legal issues, apply relevant doctrines, and resolve practical scenarios involving both common law and statutory principles. Designed for high-stakes decision-making, the exam emphasizes critical thinking, reasoning, and communication skills essential for legal professionals handling real property matters, from client advising to regulatory compliance and dispute resolution. Here are the top 5 beneficial uses of the sample exam. 1. Legal readiness assessment. The real property test ensures that bar candidates can competently analyze and resolve legal issues related to land ownership, real estate transactions, and property disputes, core areas in legal practice. 2. Foundation for practice areas. Mastery of property law is critical for careers in real estate, litigation, estate planning, and regulatory compliance, making the test essential for long-term legal effectiveness. 3. Enhancement of critical reasoning. By presenting complex, scenario-based questions, the exam strengthens logical reasoning, argumentation, and decision-making skills required in real-world client advocacy and negotiation. 4. Standardization of legal competency. The test upholds consistent benchmarks across jurisdictions, ensuring all candidates demonstrate baseline expertise in property law. 5. Preparation for real-world challenges. It equips future attorneys with the ability to address practical concerns such as title disputes, zoning issues, and landlord-tenant conflicts with legal precision.